In the third section of this essay, Donovan responds to the arguments laid out by Owen, etc. And he does so very critically, and he essentially seeks to dismantle Owen's argument and to show it to be very unreliable. So that's very much what we're going to be looking at over these next couple of videos in this section. Now, essentially, what's at stake here is he says, well, Owen is arguing that we have these intuitions of God, therefore we can feel certain that we have knowledge of God. So we can move from a sense of certainty, a sense of experience, to certain knowledge, and knowledge that we can feel kind of reliable about. Now, Donovan says that certainty is a problem in philosophy. Philosophers have been debating and discussing certainty for an awfully long time. But for our purposes, and for the purposes of Donovan's essay, he says we can break it down into two types: rational certainty and psychological certainty. Now, rational certainty would be certainty such that we have reasons for it. Psychological certainty is the feeling that we have of being certain. And so Donovan breaks it down still further to kind of equate rational certainty with being right, and psychological certainty with feeling certain. And what's quite obvious to us is that we can separate these things off very simply. We can easily imagine circumstances in which we feel certain and yet do not be right. The simple example that's given by Donovan is telling the time. You can imagine, you're sitting in a lesson and it feels like, it should be the end of the day, it should be 4 o'clock, and you look at your watch and it says 4 o'clock, and you go, man, it's brilliant, it's nearly time to go, and it feels right and it feels certain, and so on. It all seems to come together. And then you look at your watch 10 minutes later and you realise that nothing has changed. And you realise, the feeling of certainty was wrong, I'm not right. And at the heart of this, there is this kind of ease of separation. So one of the things that Donovan says is, well, what does it mean to be right? Well, it isn't a matter of having a feeling. It is a matter of your state of mind standing in the appropriate relations with the states of affairs. That's what it means to be right. So we can easily imagine these two things being separated. Now, a further problem emerges when we just think about the feeling of certainty. Well, we may often have a feeling of certainty when we are right, and that might trick us into kind of thinking that we are right when we have that feeling. But Donovan says, well, how do we know when we're having that feeling? How do you know that the feeling that you're having that suggests that you're right is precisely the feeling that you have when you are right? How can you know that for sure? How can you be certain about it? And the fact is, you can't. And it's no good saying, I feel certain that the feeling that I have is the feeling of certainty, because that's just circular. So there are some definite problems with this relationship between feeling certain and being right. We may feel certain very easily and not be right. In the next sections, Donovan's going to push this still further.